Welcome everyone, my dear bonobos. Today we have Emergency Friday video. What's the emergency? Well, we had on the pipeline for this weekend the video about even more balance tuning that happened in the beta for several new changes, buffs and nerfs, and even the video about the significant change to the loot system in Dragonflight, the removal of personal loot in the raid, for example, making BOEs much more powerful in Dragonflight, for example, but everything got delayed by the announcement of the release of the expansion on the 28th of November. The leak holds true what we saw a few weeks ago, I think over a month ago at this point, about the release of the expansion on the 28th of November and the release of the pre-patch on the 25th of October. It seems like this is going to definitely keep on schedule. Now, what's about this release? I have already made my point about the release of the expansion. I thought it was too early. I thought it needed to be delayed. Half and half. Half of it, I wanted it to be delayed because I thought there was still more to work on. You know, give Blizzard more time to work on things in game, particularly the classes and the specs and the balancing of those. And the other half was the timing. Because if the expansion releases November the 28th and we have our typical 2 weeks of pause before the release of the actual season, the release of the season means rated arena becomes enabled, Mythic Plus gets opened, and then Mythic Raids and the raid in general get opened. It means that 2 weeks after November the 28th makes for a December 15th, December 16th in Europe opening of the raid and Mythic Plus. Which also further means that the second week, the second reset of the raid, the second reset of Mythic Plus will be on the 22nd of December. So basically throughout the Christmas holidays is the second week of the competitive season. And that was the other problem, asking to delay the expansion so that the expansion can be released throughout the Christmas holidays. So released on December the 22nd so that Mythic Plus, raiding, arenas, etc. become open in January. So you get to skip the issue of the Christmas holidays. Blizzard doesn't care. Blizzard is releasing the raid and Mythic Plus and everything else right at the doorstep of Christmas holidays. But that's not all. That's not all, because they also changed something. We have heard some ominous tweets a few weeks back from Blizzard developers asking how do they feel about opening the raid with all of the difficulties combined at the same time, not having to wait one more week before Mythic raiding opens. Well, that's also what's happening. The raid release schedule is that on the week of December the 12th, normal, heroic and mythic will open with the weekly maintenance of each region. So we have no more pause, no more break between normal and heroic week and mythic. I am very much not a fan of this. I know many players won't really get into mythic raiding, at the very least at the start of the expansion anyways, or at the start of the tier anyways, but for me it's really bad. I have felt, and not liked it one bit, I have felt in Season 3 what this meant. Every minute you spend in heroic, once you know that mythic is open, feels like a waste. And this release for Dragonflight makes it just as bad. It just feels bad. You want to have one chill week before Mythic. You want to have a chill week because, for example, you can start getting used to the strategies. You can start learning the bosses in Heroic. You can start gearing up in Mythic Plus before getting into Mythic Raid. Also, it gives Blizzard time to balance the bosses. One of the big things of Mythic raiding is the time Blizzard has to balance the bosses by seeing what the guilds or the players are going to do in the week of Heroic. That's not going to happen now because now Heroic and Mythic come out at the same time. You can say this type of release schedule being very unique is because of the Christmas holidays. Once again, we always end up in this issue. If the raids was released just like all of the previous expansions where normal and heroic open and then you have to wait 1 week for Mythic, this would have meant that normal and heroic would have opened on December the 13th or something, and then Mythic would have opened exactly on Christmas week. That, I think, is what Blizzard didn't want to do, so instead of saying, fine, let's delay the releases after Christmas, let's delay the releases after December, let's just release them in January, they just shrunk, they just anticipated the release to be together at the same time as normal and heroic, which I think is just terrible. It's awful. I don't want to spend my time progressing in heroic when I know Mythic is open. That's my TLDR. That's something that I think won't be very enjoyable. There are a few other changes happening, however, because raiding didn't just get this change about Mythic being open at the same time of heroic and normal. There is also Hall of Fame, as this was something many players complained about with cross-faction. Yes, there is cross-faction, but if there are no cross-faction guilds, nobody will want to cross-faction, because if we want to progress in the raid, if we want to get our rankings being shown, being detected, being confirmed, we have to be in the same guild, and if we cross-faction, we can't do that. Blizzard is putting sort of a band-aid, so they are not actually making cross-faction guilds, but they are making it at the very least possible for you to play cross-faction with your guilds, which is Hall of Fame entries and the availability of rewards for a raid clear will require at least 16 out of 20 raiders in the raid to be from the same guild and from the same faction. There are also other things for other type of achievements and titles for guild-related things, like 5-man dungeons will require 3 guild members, 10-man raids will require 8 guild members, 25-man raids will require 20 guild members. We do unfortunately have the confirmation, maybe Blizzard was going to get dizzy and completely forget about the first rotation of Mythic Plus dungeons. In Dragonflight, you have the 4 Dragonflight dungeons out of 8 chosen to start the season with. Ruby Life Pulse, Knockout Offensive, Azure Vault and Algor's Academy, and then you have the ones from the older expansions. For Worlds of Draenor you have Shadow Moon Burial Grounds, which I'm a fan of. It's a quite thematic and nice dungeon to go through. For Mists of Pandaria you have Temple of the Jade Serpent, with one less boss, actually. It's no longer 4 bosses in the temple, it's 3. They took out the RP. The roleplay boss is actually no longer there. And then you have, unfortunately, still confirmed, one of which is Court of Stars, which is acceptable but not great. And then there is also Valor, which is a disaster, awful, a total plague on the Mythic Plus pool for the first season, unfortunately. Also, talking about Mythic Plus affixes, we also have another confirmation coming in Dragonflight with this announcement. Necrotic and Inspiring are actually gone. We touched on this when they disappeared from the database in the beta, once the affixes were pushed in the beta and those 2 were missing. Maybe it was something else, maybe there was another reason for that. No, they are actually getting removed. The bad news for this is that Blizzard is saying we are going to be introducing a new seasonal affix, like it's normal, but no more. So effectively, the pool of affixes will be shorter. Effectively, the cycle of affixes, so that the amount of time you will be revisiting those affixes that already exist is going to become increased because 2 of these are missing. We don't get anything new in terms of affixes in Mythic Plus. It's also worth mentioning, talking about Mythic Plus, that much like Mythic Raiding is open the same week of normal and heroic raiding, Mythic Plus without the item level cap will also be open on week 1. The purpose of the Mythic Plus cap was to make it so that when you get into the raid, you don't just have full heroic quality gear from Mythic Plus. So they were limiting the amount of item level you were looting from Mythic Plus. Even if you were completing Mythic Plus 15 keys, the item level was capped. Now, of course, with Mythic Raiding coming out the same week of the other raid difficulties, there is no reason to cap Mythic Plus anymore. So Mythic Plus will be fully unlocked the same day the raids open, which makes it even more annoying because now no longer are you pressed for time doing heroic raids and then Mythic raids in the same week. Now you also have to just spam Mythic Plus as much as possible because there is no item level cap and you want to try to get as much Mythic Plus gear as possible. Did I mention Dragonflight also has professions being able to give you Mythic Raid quality gear, so you also want to go in the open world and spam as many resources, as many materials, grinding quests, world quests and puzzles to get that loot as well. it just seems like a very crowded, a very, very busy, perhaps too busy release of the season. So this is the announcement we have gotten for the release of the expansion. I think it's fine to have the expansion release and then wait 2 weeks before the season actually opens. This is something we have seen multiple times. It's perfectly normal. It's a little bit less normal, and I like it much less. Number one, to have the competitive season release on December the 12th, 13th and whatever, because it's gonna come way too close to Christmas holidays. It's gonna be just annoying to having to deal with those two things at the same time. And then the other fact of getting Mythic Raiding releasing at the same time as the other raid difficulties. As I cannot shake my hate for being in normal raid or being in heroic raid, knowing that I could be in a mythic raid. It just feels bad. I can't get rid of this bad feeling I have in doing this. I don't know what you guys think about it. Let me guys know what are your takes on getting all of the 3 raid difficulties out together, Mythic Plus uncapped at the same time as all of the 3 raid difficulties. If you have no issues with this type of crowded season coming out very close to Christmas holidays, let me guys know your point of view for this expansion release. My camp, my statement is still that I wished the expansion was to be delayed. There is still hope. For all of the Hopium enjoyers like myself, remember that Shadowlands was delayed on October the 4th when the release was supposed to be October the 23rd or 25th. So literally 3 weeks before the release, it was delayed by a month. So there is still hope. There is still hope for the expansion to get some last minute, last few weeks delay out of nowhere. That's at this point my last Copium defense for this release dates that I don't like that much. Now, with this being said, we can now leave each other after this emergency Friday video about the release schedule for Dragonflight. Of course, as usual, a round of applause to all of my Patreon supporters for being a big part in what allows me to continue to produce content for WoW. If you want to continue to support as well, not just with Patreon, you don't have to spend money directly or steal it from your parents' wallet. You can just like and comment down below on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Last I've been told, it's still completely free, doesn't actually cost money doing that, so you can go ahead and support me that way as well. Lastly, for more social interactions, general simping, parasocial relationships, you can follow me on Twitter, as well as subscribing to my Patreon right down at these 2 links. Now it's done. Now we have no longer anything to say. Thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon. And in the meantime, I forgot my tea bags in my water like 10 minutes ago. It's a disaster.